Hello, this is National Chess Master Rats. I'm here at chess.com analyzing members' best games. These are being submitted in my group, my free video lessons group. I encourage everyone to join the group and submit your game. I'll get to it. Alright, this game was submitted by hgisinger of Sverige. That is Sweden, if you don't know what I'm talking about, if you're not from that part of the world. They pronounce it Sverige. It's spelled a little different too. Look it up. Anyway, it's a game he submitted. And I'm going to run through the moves here a little bit. We'll all start offering some comments and suggestions as we go. Hopefully this will be a learning experience. Okay, Mr. Gisinger has played the Perk defense, and White has kind of played a tame response. Normal is d4. Now there's nothing wrong with knight f3. It's probably going to transpose, but Black is fine. He'll still maintain equality, and White will only have the advantage of the first move. Okay, so now just move on a little bit, and this is perfectly good. And now we see d4, and we're into something a little normal. Now, one thing Black can do is try to maybe go into Philidor defense. He's getting the basic setup here: knight b d7, and then followed up with e5. And it's a perfectly acceptable line of the Philidor's defense to play. You'll have to look that one up because it's beyond the scope of this video. But be aware that you can always transpose into something. And a direct move, if Black wants, is just to play g6 and go into your Perk type formations. But Black chooses not to do this. We'll see what happens. He goes and pins the knight. Now, is that premature? Yes and no. To a large degree, Black is committing to probably having to trade that bishop for the knight when it comes out this early. A lot of times Black will do this when there's pressure on this d4 square, okay? But right now there's no pressure on it, okay? The Black knight on b8 is not on c6, which would be in turn attacking it, right? So that's not there. The bishop on f8 is not fianchettoed, so there's no pressure on the long diagonal on the d4 square. But there's nothing. It may not be the best move, but it's certainly a perfectly playable move. Oh, someone wants to be my friend. I accept everybody's friends. Okay. All right. So just ask me to be my friend here. I'll accept. Okay. So anyway, point being, back to this game. Let's see. It's White to play. So it does take a tempo to try to win that bishop right now, okay? And Black should probably trade, but that develops the White queen, and then the game is still about even, but White will have the bishop pair for what it's worth, and if the position opens up, those bishops can have a field day. So let's see what happens. But again, it may not be the most accurate move, but it's bishop g4, but it's certainly a playable move. And the next move is, once again, I think it follows under the same line. I didn't expect Black to play this. When Black plays d6 on the first move against e4, I'm expecting that what he will be doing is fianchettoing that dark squared bishop. But here he chooses instead to develop it on the f8, a3 diagonal. Now let's stop and take stock here for a moment. White has 3 minor pieces developed. Black has but 2. White's only made 2 pawn moves. That's the reason why. Okay, Black has made 3. But Black has no weaknesses in his position at all. The only square that's really unprotected in the Black position is b7, and White's not poised to attack that at all. And the Black pawns, they're controlling, a good deal of territory. White can't necessarily entrench anything in a piece on those squares, and anytime he tries to advance a pawn, it's going to be met with certain consequences. Like, for instance, if White plays e5, Black can just play d5, and it's true he's lost a tempo, but then Black has the break c5 coming, attacking the White pawn chain, okay? So, and then this bishop here, his scope will increase as that diagonal opens up. So, and then d5, it's got some possibilities, but it does open up the position. But for one thing, Black could just ignore it and let White exchange, and doesn't really have to worry too much about a pawn on d6. Just continue his development. So if d5, black should just probably play bishop e7 and get castled. Just ignore it because white has no threats. But e5, you can't play d5 right away. I neglected to mention because the knight's loose, but there's another opportunity to exchange, and this is what does happen here in a moment. We'll talk about it when we get there. Okay, so white, I believe, makes a good move here. He castles. There's usually nothing wrong with castling because it helps your rooks get connected, and white's got a nice little lead in development, but black doesn't have any weaknesses, so black develops a piece. And now here comes the e5 push. And one perfectly good move here is just to play knight e7. Oh, I neglected to say this was a turn-based game of one move in 3 days. But I don't know how long the players are spending on their moves because there's no timestamp with these games. A lot of people play these turn-based games as if they're regular games. And sometimes you get both players online at the same time, and they'll rattle off 5, 10, 15, 20 moves. Well, this simply is not good, period. It's kind of up to me to educate how to play correspondence chess. My program mentions it. I've talked about it, spend up to 3 hours a move. I'm going to work on sharing more about how to play a better correspondence game because this in turn is what will help your game. I'll just repeat the story. Essentially with me, I played a bunch of games by postcard back in 1980 when I was just barely rated over 2,000, and I didn't play over the board chess for a year. And what this basically did was it forced me to sit down and analyze variations, and I spent a lot of time trying this, trying that, and found lines that worked and found lines that didn't work. And just the practice of playing all these games, I had about 36 going, I don't remember exactly. Just the practice of getting all these games going put me in good shape. When I came back to over the board chess a year later, I immediately dropped about 100 rating points just from inactivity, and boom, I gained 300 points in 3 months and hit master like that. Basically, I owe a great deal of that success to playing correspondence chess. And correspondence chess, which we call online or turn-based here at chess.com, can help you learn. But you got to take your time. If you're just blitzing your moves like so many of you do, you're just wasting your time. So I'm going to be coming up with some ways to help everybody play a better correspondence game. Okay, so one drawback with e5 push is white hasn't completed his development yet. And you usually don't want to open up the board until your development's complete. So there was nothing, of course, if white develops a piece, say with bishop f4, black has time to get something developed too. But then so does white. White will develop the queen, and then black develops his knight. And then maybe before you push e5, think about bringing the rook over. So just to give you an example of how I would analyze this position, if it was my move in this position, and obviously it isn't, let's get rid of those arrows. Usually I would use a pocket chess set to analyze. If you want to set up a full board, that's fine. But I would just start entering possible variations. Now you can't cover every variation, and I certainly couldn't show you every variation in this video. But what I would do is I'd set up my pocket set and I'd say, well, what's a good candidate move aside from e5? Bishop f4 is one. Now, obviously, black has a lot of replies here. I'm just going to look at one. And sometimes in my videos I call this fantasy chess because it's just a possible fantasy line, just to see what can kind of happen and look for improvements as we go. And as I was saying, now white develops a piece and black develops a piece. And then what I was saying is maybe before white pushes e5, he should complete his development. And that move does it. And there's never anything wrong with developing pieces. Rarely there is, unless you have an immediate win of a piece or something. And so let's just do the same thing. Let's develop for black. That's fair, right? Okay, now let's have a look at e5. Okay, just one line. Like I say, that's all it is. Now let's suppose black takes, and then white takes. Now there's got to be careful. There's a threat down here, and there's a threat right here, but we can cover both in one move. Let's play the knight here. All right. Now we got a kind of a threat on the bishop, although the bishop's guarded. Black in turn has a threat down here. So let's suppose for a moment, what white does is he decides not to make an exchange and close the d file. Let's just suppose he plays bishop g3. Now it's black to move, so you want to consider a move for black. And since there's some latent threats possibly against this knight on b7 or d7, let's just move it. Okay, and then now it's white to move. Let's come up with a move for white. Well, let's avoid an exchange altogether. Let's play knight e4. Now we want to try to prepare to kick this knight away. We're not ready yet because that pawn is hanging, but we're going to be ready. Okay, and then let's suppose that black swings this rook over. Now he's got some potential tricks on the white queen, although I'm not seeing any good square for it. Looks like excuse me, maybe white can get away with playing b3, which supports c4. Now black needs to find a home for that knight. Well, it looks like it's got one. If it kicked on c4, you can get to b4. And then if it gets kicked again, it can go back to a6, but you might suffer some double pawns. So then, like I say, I would look this out and say, you know, I don't know if I can survive any of these discoveries. Maybe I can. Maybe I can do this and then make an exchange. But you have to stop. Then you stop and evaluate the position. But clearly, there's very little wrong with either position here. Maybe, like I say, maybe black has knight f6 as a resource, and then a bailout exchange on e4. But this is how I'd analyze the game, and I'd try to see things. And if there was one little problem in the position, maybe I would go back and try to tweak that and find something better to do. You know, if I left a square weak, I would try the same variation without leaving the square weak and go find a better move. And that's kind of how you analyze, and you just go through a few things. You can't cover everything. There's no way. And every time I play by postcard, I keep notes in my notebook. And every time the new move would arrive in the mail, I would look at my notes, review them, and chances are one of my variations was one that he would play. Most likely, not always, but most likely. And I would bring those notes forward in my notebook, re-examine them, and start looking even deeper. And what happens is, as you do this, you basically are getting a feel for analyzing. And if you keep doing this legitimately every move, your game is going to improve. And it doesn't take that long. You can look at a few. How long have I looked at these variations? This is just one. Well, you can go back and look at 3 more. You can do this in 20 minutes. And the neat thing about using them on chess.com now, if you use the analysis board, once you analyze a variation, you in your analysis window, you just go to notes, you drag the mouse across the moves. I can't show it on here. You drag the more motion like that, drag the mouse across the moves, right click, copy, go back to your notes window and paste it. Now, unfortunately, the white moves and the black moves stick together, but you can take a time and separate them. There's no space between them. But boom, you've got your notes. It's that easy. You don't have to stop and write them down. And sometimes I analyze on a pocket set, and I have my own. Now I have my own list of notes, and sometimes I analyze on the chess.com window, and I put my notes there. I've got notes everywhere, and that's how I'm doing it. Because you play a number of games and you forget what you're thinking, and you don't want to forget what you're thinking, what you've worked on before, because you may miss the win that you worked out before, or you might even lose because your analysis was wrong. So you've got to check your notes and then try to take a fresh approach. So there's all kinds of ways to help you play a better correspondence game. And it's my objective as the coach of this group to teach you how to do it. Because this is why my rating went up. And I believe your rating can go up too if you'll take this seriously. If you don't want to take it seriously and want to play fast, if you just enjoy a game, then that's fine. We're not holding you short for that. But we want you to get better. It's such a good feeling to play a better game. Anyway, let's get back to what we were doing. And like I say, I don't have to sit here and prove that this line works or doesn't work. When you're analyzing, you don't need perfection. your opponent will show you what you did wrong if you did something wrong. Okay, that's how you learn. Okay, because he's playing better moves. Okay, so let's back it up. Okay, so I think E5 was premature, simply because you're opening up the position before you develop. Oops, wrong one. It's silly PGM, the way that this site handles it. Okay, so I think it was premature because the development isn't complete. So let's have a look at what happens. Now, here I have, this next move's good. Knight D5. The alternative is to play the knight to D7 and try to work on the E5 square. To do that, the queen will get to C7. You have to stop and at some point move this pawn to C5. But probably before that, you got to watch out for that knight coming in. The idea of pushing the pawn to C5 is to vacate C6 for the queen. For the queen's knight, so that it can be another attacker on E5. That's just one way to play it. A way to analyze, a candidate move to analyze. I can't sit here and show you why or why that doesn't work. We'll be here all day. You guys wanted to learn. You take the time and you study your games and you find that out. Okay, now white makes an exchange. Now here I'm going to criticize black's reply. He took with a pawn. I think the best move, and we'll talk about which pawn in a moment, I think the best move to play here is to take with the queen. And I'll tell you why. Okay, in the first place, this gets the queen developed. Okay, that's the first place. Nimzovich's rule is make exchanges that develop your pieces. Don't make exchanges that develop your opponent's pieces. So white just made an exchange that black had an opportunity to develop his queen. Now there's two main lines here. That white can trade queens, or white can ignore a queen trade. And if white trades queens, black solved the problem of getting his queen developed, and we go from there. And the queens do get exchanged, but they get exchanged on D8. We'll see what I mean. But let's look at the alternative, where white says, well, hey, I don't have to take your queen. I can offer you a chance to trade queens and develop my rook. Okay? So the idea that white has here is he wants black to play queen takes on D1 so that he can develop his rook. That's white's objective. But black doesn't have to trade queens. It's probably a mistake to do so. So a good move is just simply to play queen to C7, or queen to A5. I'm getting ahead of myself. Now white kicks it again. It looks like white's getting somewhere here. Black has this interesting move, queen C7, and now black is threatening to win a pawn with bishop takes on F3 and queen takes C5. Okay, and now suddenly what's happened is this position has taken on a lot of characteristics of the Caro-Kann defense, and which is known to be pretty much equal for black. And if black equalizes out of the opening, then he's done fine. So this was a interesting sideline to play. I like to keep pieces on the board. When I was new at chess, I wanted to make exchanges all the time, and especially to queens, they terrified me. But as I got better, I learned that I can do more in a position if I have my pieces on the board, and ideally I think I have the confidence that I can do more with my pieces than you can do with yours. Therefore, the winning chances will be with me, not with you. Okay, that's the approach you want to have, the confidence and attitude you want to develop for yourself. Okay, so I think that was a better choice for black, was to take with the queen on D5. Instead, he takes with this. Now, which pawn do you take with? If you take with the E pawn, it kind of exposed the E5 pawn a little bit to potential attack on the E file now. You give this bishop a retreat if white decides to kick it, but it's still got some retreats. I think he picked the right way to do it. He took with this C pawn. This reopens the C6 square for the knight, and it's better on that square than getting on D7 because it's got more mobility. It's controlling a couple of center squares. Okay, so I think he made the right choice. But now white continues with what he was doing. He opens up the position before his development's complete. Okay, so let's just see what happens. Black takes, and I think it's okay to take. And now white trades the queens. Okay, so now the queens are gone. But we've had a lot of exchanges, and there's still some drawbacks in this position. mainly development. Okay, White's got two guys sitting here at home. So does Black. Okay, so you kind of want to avoid lines making a lot of exchanges when you're not developed, because what's for Black, what's this bishop going to do to win the game? It's only really developed piece, although you could argue the bishop is developed on d8. It's found some new diagonals. What are these pieces doing to win the game for Black, or get him any kind of advantage? Well, absolutely nothing. And the same is true for the white pieces. What's this bishop doing? Well, it's going to recapture a pawn. That's what it's going to do. What's this knight doing? Well, it's pinned. It's also defending a pawn. So you don't want to make exchanges and just walk into this, because you kind of have to start over. You're starting a chess game now with a smaller army, and you can always do more in a game when you have your pieces, and especially when you have your pieces developed. But the more pieces, the merrier of time you're going to have. So try to avoid making exchanges. But one drawback with this strategy, that now Black says, hey, look, I can double your pawns, and I'm going to do it. Now this costs him the bishop pair, but that's okay. White's got a permanent, at least one permanent weakness. And let's see what happens. Okay. Okay, so just a little bit more development. Now, when White, let me back up. I didn't make a comment. I apologize. When White played King H1, that's just a bad move, because it seemed to me like what he's wanting to do is he's wanting to play Rook G1 and Bishop H6 and hoping for some kind of an attack. But Black has plenty of time to react to that. But then White doesn't follow up with it, with his plan. So King H1 was just a bad move. White needs to develop. Bishop E3. That'll put some pressure on A7 that Black will have to spend a tempo later to get his rook developed. But King H1 is just, don't make moves like that, okay? So Black can smile. He's got a gained a tempo now. He can attack a pawn. Now he's restricted the white bishop. So maybe White just didn't analyze, when he played King H1. He just saw the moves that he wanted to see without considering what his opponent could do. And so clearly this is a case of not sitting down and analyzing. Again, if you're analyzing this position as White, if you have this position as White in an online game, you want to examine candidate moves. What are candidate moves? Well, we know he selected King H1 because that was the move he played. Did he consider Bishop E3? Just because it has a point to it, as I just explained. It's got a tempo on this pawn that at some point Black may have to deal with that because his rook is guarding it. Now there are a lot of ways to deal with it, but like the knight can go to C6 and the pawn is secure. But then maybe White can get rid of that knight at some point too. There's all kinds of potential, and you always have more options when you develop, because then your pieces will be on squares and they can find new squares. So Bishop E3 wins hands down over King H1. Another move is Rook D1 for if anything. I think even A4 with the idea of developing the rook on A3 is better than King H1. King H1 is just a bad move, and White can smile. Now, who's talking to me now? Let me click alerts. Someone else wants to be my friend. Okay, you may be my friend. Anybody. I'm accepting. Come on. Well, back to this. Okay. Develop. Okay. Somebody else wants to be chat. I'm busy, so you just have to wait. Okay. King H1. Okay. So Black develops, like I say. Now White has to stop and abandon his plan that I suggested of Rook G1 and Bishop H6. He has to abandon that. And this gives now Black time to, hit the wrong button. Now he takes this diagonal, and White opposes it. And now another exchange. Now, for what it's worth, we've had a lot of these exchanges. Both sides have castled. Both sides have mirroring rooks. Both sides have developed a minor piece. And it's black's move. White has a set of double pawns. The bishop is worth more than a knight, but and it can be in a position like this. I'll talk about more of that in a little bit. But black has at least equalized, which is his goal as black. Okay, black is at least equalized, and it's his move. So we have to say that black now has a slight advantage. Now I don't know what a computer would say about this position, but it's wrong. If it gives white an advantage here, black is better. Black has king's tempo closer to the center, and it's his move. So I don't know what a computer says. I didn't ask it. And if you ask it, you're wasting your time, because the computer will understand tactics. It'll show you the forced win you missed, but that's about it. It doesn't know how to evaluate a position by telling you why. I tell you why. Okay? Anyway, it's black's move. And now this is an interesting question here. It's something that it's one of these things that haunts us for the ages. You know, there's like an old question: who would you pick from Gilligan's Island to be your date, Ginger or Mary Ann? Well, here's the question: which rook to move? And there's an expression: right rook or wrong rook. Well, black wants to put a rook on d8. Which one should go there? And should he pick d8? That's another question. Let's try and address this and solve it. First, I'll show you what he played, then we'll try to decide if it's the right rook or the wrong rook. Okay? He played rook a8. Now, we have one big open file here. Well, there's two open files, but one is clogged up for a moment. There's some pieces in the way. We have two open files. Black wants one of them. Well, whichever one black picks, white can oppose. But if black's trying to double rooks, we'd love to double rooks on the open file, but since white can oppose it, it's not going to be that easy. So one way to play it is just put one rook on one file and the other rook on the other file. Okay? That's one way to do it. If you do that, then you got a rook on each file. That, it's like having a meal in one hand and another meal in the other hand, instead of just having a meal in one hand and nothing else to eat after that. I mean, the first one will feed you now, but you're going to be hungry later. What would you rather have? A meal in both hands. So just from that logic, rook putting this queen rook on c8 is the better move than putting it on d8. And another thing about it is it starts threatening some desperados. Well, black gets some too, or white gets some too. Now let's just burn a move for white, and you'll see what I mean. Okay, he takes here. Now if white recaptures, black grabs a bishop, right? Okay, so like I say, now white gets some tricks here. Now what can black do? His knight can't really go anywhere with tempo, so let's just take it. And now for what it's worth, black can trade this rook off and then stick a rook on the 7th rank. Now how would you evaluate this position? Well, if white plays rook b1, I think he's going to lose, because rook e2 seems to win the e pawn, and then the e5 pawn's going to fall. Although white will rush off and try and get on the 7th rank himself. But just having this rook on the 7th rank, black can improve his position. He doesn't have to rush to win this e3 pawn. He will then get his king centralized, and I think black's winning. So that means white has to play rook f2 here. Now he's in danger he's in a lot of danger here. I don't know, you have to sit down and evaluate rook takes f2. The fact that white has a couple of weak pawns here, this is a perfect opportunity to sit and analyze, because in a correspondence game, you can sit here and prove, does black win this ending? And if he does, then you know that you have, when you play rook ac8, you have a legitimate threat. So again, I don't want to and if anything, black certainly can't go wrong with rook c1 check. And again, you have to stop and evaluate this. If anything, if white comes back and black makes an exchange into a king and pawn ending, the white king is one square behind where he could have been. therefore the black king can get a little better position maybe than he might have if you take on f2 right away. So there's a lot to be seen when you analyze a postal game just by playing out the possibilities. So let's back up. So I believe rook c8 is a better move than rook a8. Now, is it the best move? Well, we'll come back to that in just a second. So clearly, white has to deal with this. He can do this in a number of ways. He can play pawn b3. He can just simply oppose rooks. There's nothing wrong with that, right? There's two ways black can deal with it, or white can deal with this threat. But that's why I wanted to burn a move and show what black was threatening. And if white plays rook ac1 here, black no longer has the threat of knight takes e5. But then, like I say, then he gets his other rook over to d8, and of course white does the same. But but here I'll just show you. Let me just show you why I think this is better. Rook here. Now he plays this, and now we start bringing the king closer. Okay. If white trades rooks, now black's on that open file, right? And threatening to come to the 7th rank. So the idea of putting a rook on d8 was good, but it was the wrong rook. Okay? It's okay. The game's perfectly playable by playing the wrong rook. It's just that certain opportunities vanish when you don't find the most precise move. So you kind of want to think in these terms. Next time you have two rooks that can go to one square, which is the right rook. And another drawback with rook ad8 is it took away the possibility of this rook going to c8. Okay, so now that left one question I didn't answer yet. Is it better to play if this rook belongs on c8 and if this rook belongs on d8? Which is the best move to play? Well, the rook to c8 made a threat, so I think that's the best move to play. That's the best answer I can give. Although there's nothing wrong with rook fd8. Okay, so let's get the right position. Okay, wrong rook. I gotta find. I know how to find it easy enough. No, that's what he did. He did play rook ad8. Okay, so let's see what happened. And white opposed, symmetrical. And I think black did this too quickly. But here he doesn't have the option. Of playing king f8 as he did in the line I just showed you. So black makes an exchange, and that's one drawback with making these exchanges. It takes away white's less active rook and makes it active, and it takes away black's more active rook and makes it and leaves him with a passive one. So this actually helps white ever so slightly. But now black goes into rook ad8, and I'm going to explain there's a theoretical drawback with what black's doing here. Okay, and here now I can say it. All right, for those of you that belong to ICC, if you go to I have the same handle over there. If you go to my library, I think it's game 159. It might be game 150. There's a game Stoltz cashed in The Hague 1928. That's the Olympics. Cashed in was once America's best player outside of Frank Marshall, who was still U.S. champion but wouldn't play him in a match. So I don't think Cashton ever got to be U.S. champion, although he's clearly the best American player. I met him a number of times before he passed away. He was a wonderful person, easy to talk to, great guy. He founded Chess Review with Horowitz back in the 1930s, and then it became Horowitz's things exclusively. But anyway, just a little chess history there. The game is theoretically important. I have the whole game score, which is kind of hard to find, but you can find it almost any endgame anthology that's got worth its weight in gold or worth its merit. It basically proves why the bishop beats the knight in the ending, and basically the winning strategy is the king and bishop work together to create weaknesses in the black position and entry squares so that the king eventually wins a pawn, and you go on from there. Well, there's one nice thing about the black position here, as opposed to the position poor Mr. Stoltz had again against Cashton. Stoltz already had one weak pawn. He advanced his pawn to h3, and then he ended up creating another weakness. For the moment, black has no pawn weaknesses, so there's a good chance black is holding a draw here. But if anyone has winning chances, it's probably white. But there's another drawback, and yet it's a plus. White has double pawns. His pawns are, but again, his pawns are not mobile. Another plus for white is these pawns are on the opposite color of the bishop, so the bishop is not going to get tied down behind it where it can't move. Just imagine if this white bishop was a black bishop over here on f2. Well, those, or even g3. Just picture a bishop on either of those red squares. That bishop has no mobility. Okay, none. Period. Nada. Zilch. So you want your pawns on the opposite color of your bishop. So my feeling is the game's about even still. That's just my gut feeling. But black's got to be careful because there's certain drawbacks with this position. Okay, so king f8 and little redeployment here. Now white's probably got every reason to be happy. His king is centralized, but where's his king going to go? The answer is nowhere. Okay, the entry squares into the black position are covered. b5 is the only one yet uncovered, but that can be dealt with if it needs to be and when it needs to be. But black, meanwhile, has some good squares for his pieces, and he starts to find them. Even though this opens up c5 for the white king, if king d4, knight f5 check, and the king can't necessarily go to c5 because the e3 pawn hangs, but you do want to check to make sure that, well, you give that up. Maybe the king's going to come in here and eat a couple guys. So let's analyze that. Okay, what about king d4? Maybe somebody would say, oh, I can't play that move. He just checks me. Well, let's look. We don't know until we look, right? I haven't looked yet. I'm looking now. Okay, so the idea here is we want to... Oh, there's... See? There's bishop hanging. So it's kind of risky, but it's something you got to analyze to find out. How else do you know? You don't know. So this bishop's got to spend a tempo. Okay, we'll come here. Now let's go grab some pawns while we're at it, because that's probably the best defense. Now, do we go for another one? Yeah, why not? Let's just try it. Wow, extremely double-edged. My suspicion is black is better because he has an extra pawn. But the white king is ready to do or die with those pawns that he eventually wants to get running. Something to analyze. I don't know what's happening here. You sit and you play this out. You try to figure out what's going on. That's how you get better. You analyze this. Something to look at. Okay. So anyway, he didn't play king e4 or king d4. He played bishop f1. I guess maybe his idea is that if the knight makes his way to f5, he'll chop it off. We'll see here in a moment. Now black centralizes his king. There it is. Black supports this. Now here comes a mistake on white's part. He's trying to force something in. This creates a weakness in the white position. And the weakness is there's a pawn on f4. And it's no longer supported by a pawn. And black, I think, finds a very, very good move here. We all got to compliment him and tip our hat to him, because this is a great move, h6. The purpose is to undermine the defender of the pawn on e5. White had a pawn chain. He no longer has it. Black is undermining it. So white doesn't know what to do. He just shoves a pawn, and here it comes, g5. And doesn't matter if white takes or not, e5 is going to be a weakness now. So he pushes, and curiously, black misses this knight check right away. He can look at that and did he miss it and decide whether it was worth anything or not. But really, black's pretty much getting a clear advantage now. Now he tries f6, and boom, the pawns start falling. So white kind of self-destructed here. Okay, so king b5, and there goes another pawn. Now we got passed pawns, let's use them. And now knight f3, and white decided he didn't want to play anymore. So the game was still about even until White did the E4 push, and the moment that happened, Black moved 27. Black found a fine move H6 and got an advantage. So it's a terrific ending win by Black. You know, there's a lot of points to be gained in the endings. A lot of people don't know how to play endings. They're apparently ending books aren't. You're not allowed to use them on chess.com. It's unfortunate, but it's good to have ending books and go look them up afterwards. You know, one thing about my course says, which was written before I was active at all on chess.com, it says, you know, don't study endings until you from over the board games until they actually occur. Then go look them up, because you know you could be spending hours on endings and they never come up. But the idea is to play like in a correspondence game where you can study the ending as it's going on and learn it as it's going on. Well, you know, you're just going to have you can't use an ending book. I don't know what books you have. I know they're very expensive. I have what I call the Averbach series. They were published in the 1970s. They're translated from the Russian version, where the Soviets tried to basically set up a bunch of endgame books that covered general principles for virtually every possible ending. Knight versus knight, bishop versus bishop, bishop versus knight, rook versus minor piece, queen versus rook and minor piece, queen versus queen, rook versus rook, pawn and pawn endings. How many is that? Is that all 8? And I know Pergamon republished them in though the versions I have are in English descriptive notation. Do you understand how to use that? Pawn to king 4. That's E4. If you don't understand it, you're going to be lost trying to figure that out. Anyway, Pergamon reissued a lot of them in the 80s, or maybe the 90s, I don't remember, where they combined 2 volumes into one. They're a great source. The other endgame source I have is written by Chiron, which is a very, very French name, Cheron, and they're in German. I know enough German to get by. I know the basic words, chess words, and a lot of the positions in Chiron's books are duplicated from Auerbach's, but he has some more complex endings where you have more pieces on the board. And yet another endgame source, encyclopedia style, is Grandmaster Reuben Fine wrote his basic chess endings back in the 1940s. Now that book is now 73 years old. Well, when I was new at chess back in the early 70s, someone was always making a correction. There were a lot of mistakes in Fine's book. And theoretically, if you were smart, which I wasn't, you would write those corrections in the book. And somebody was making a hobby out of it, submitting a letter every month with new corrections. And I don't know if anybody ever published those corrections or not, but you can still, they're pretty minuscule, but you can still probably find basic chess endings on the market. I'm sure it costs a small fortune, but you'll have to know English descriptive notation. You know, if you want to get good at chess, you have to invest in some books, and they can get expensive. You know, there's plenty of videos, a series out on how to play these endings. You can become a diamond member here at chess.com and watch them. You can learn endings that way. You can take a lesson from me, and I'll teach them to you. I have a whole army of coaches. You can take a lesson from them at usually a lower price, and they can teach you. Or you can learn the hard way and play from experience. But anyway, I love making these videos. I love helping you guys learn to play better chess. And oh look, there's one more threat on the board besides the pawn on e5. Duh. Knight d4 check. Well, who cares? You know, either one wins. But White's gonna probably not lose his bishop. Actually, he lost his king because he resigned. Okay, thanks for your time. I'm a little behind on these from my head cold that put me under for a few days. You can see I'm still a little bit hoarse, but I'm going to get back and get another one done here, and look forward to making these. Keep submitting them, ladies and gentlemen. You know, this is your chance, in effect, to get a free chess lesson. This video is now 45 minutes. It would cost somebody $15 for me to make this, and I do it to help everybody because that's me. And well, that's it. Take care, everybody. Thanks for your time.